We are live. Thanks for joining us, y'all. Appreciate it. We're going to get started in just 1 minute here. Thanks for joining. Drop in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. And we appreciate you joining us. We're going to get started in about 30 seconds here. Be sure also, and these my producers make me say this, I need to hit the like button on the bottom so that we know that you're watching, because I do pay attention to that stuff and whatnot. Oh, there it goes. So, yeah, today I have the opportunity. The last time a senator that I had a senator on the show, it was with the wonderful Mazie Hirono,
Mm.
um, who I'm a fan of, and so I'm keeping it out west and whatnot. I'm sure we'll bring some East Coasters on. I know Noem talks with Murphy and some others, so I promise folks on the East Coast. But most of our listeners and watchers are from California. Um, so I just want to thank you for coming on the show. For anyone who doesn't know who the senator is, I have a wonderful introduction for y'all that you may not know. We have special guest, MIT grad, right? Former
Right.
Secretary of State, former state senator from California, served as the president of the LA City Council, and is now current US Senator from California, Senator Alex Padilla. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for having me. It's busy times, so much going on, as you know, but appreciate the chance to talk to you and to your many, many followers. And not to get us off topic right away, but you gave a shout out to Mazie Hirono as a prior guest. I want to give her a shout out because immediately after what happened a couple weeks ago now in the federal building in Los Angeles, she was quick, not just to send a note over to my office, but a whole lot of goodies from Hawaii for me, for the staff, in what was a very
Mhm.
anxious moment. So just speaks to her heart, and just she should know we appreciate her.
Absolutely. And you brought up that moment. People know what happened, but what I want to know, and I'm curious about, is you were going to ask her something. Like, what were you going to ask Christy Nome in that press conference before the altercation happened? With everything. I don't know how to define that, but I'll
Yeah.
say, what were you going to ask her?
Yeah. So I'll answer that, and not to get back into what happened in the play-by-play, but I think important context, the reason I was there, not expecting to be there, not planning to be there, but choosing to try to listen in hopes of getting some actual helpful information, is because the Department of Homeland Security, because the administration overall has been non-responsive to questions since the beginning of the term. I mean, I sit on a number of committees, but particularly the Judiciary Committee. I'm the ranking member on the Immigration Subcommittee of Judiciary. Get no answers. They're non-responsive to our letters or inquiries. And so my point in getting to the press conference was to try to get more information. At some point, the audacity to ask a question, and my question was this, although, 2 words into it, you saw what happened. For all the emphasis by Secretary Noem, by Donald Trump, and so many others on, well, we're targeting violent criminals, we're targeting dangerous criminals, we're targeting the worst of the worst. I've been hearing more than just anecdotally that the actual operations, the actual enforcement actions are far from just that. Yes, I'm sure there are some bad guys getting caught up, and that's a good thing. If that was the exclusive focus, there would be no debate, there would be no discussion. But what we hear a lot more of is story after story of maybe an undocumented immigrant, but otherwise law abiding, tax paying, hardworking, family raising contributor to community and to our country that are getting swept up, detained, many cases deported, in many cases without due process, right? It's a significant overreach by the administration of the what and the how they are doing this. And so I wanted to shed some light on that and ask for some statistics. How many
Mhm.
violent criminals? How many non? And of the non, like what's the category? What's the breakdown? What's the supposed offense or not? They've refused to provide that information, even after the press conference that day ended. And I had a quick conversation with the secretary, not forthcoming at all. And several days later, we start to hear of all sources from the Cato Institute, right? This is not a liberal think tank. From the Cato Institute, more than 90% of migrants detained, going back to October, right, the federal fiscal year, have no serious criminal conviction. No serious criminal conviction. So who are they is actually an important follow-up question. And you've heard my statements. They're targeting farm workers, right? You see ICE
Hmm.
agents chasing farm workers in the fields,
Right.
cooks in restaurants, workers in hotels. It's categories of workers that at the end of the first Trump administration were designated essential at the outset of the COVID-19 pandemic. So think about the cruelty, the cruel irony of that. Deemed essential by Trump in the first term, and now being targeted with these raids and deportations in the second term.
Yeah, and I couldn't believe yesterday when Attorney General Pam Bondi, she testified in front of the Senate yesterday, and I believe Senator Gary Peters was interviewing her or speaking with her, asking some questions, and asked about, what's the guidelines for the people who are wearing masks and not announcing themselves, not giving like I'm up with ICE, I'm here for this reason, um, and designating who they are, why they're there, sort of thing. And she acted like she didn't know. And I've seen this time and time again where, I've talked to people, Michael Cohen, and also other people who have been involved with the Trump administration before, where it's the I didn't know line. And then you talk to him a little bit more, and it's like, well, I knew, but I didn't want to say any. Well, he was going to fire me if I did this, and I just don't. I don't understand why you're in a role if you're not going to try and make a difference for good. I'll never understand that. And that's what, like, when you got into politics in the first place, I fell into it. I never wanted to be in politics. I just kind of like, what made you get into politics? What made you want to get into politics in the first place? Or did you fall into it? How did that happen?
Yeah, I guess kind of like you, kind of fell into it. I mean, you look at my upbringing, born and raised in Los Angeles, so what's happening in Los Angeles is very personal to me because it's home. Proud son of immigrants. My parents came from Mexico in the 1960s. They actually met in Los Angeles. They came separately, met in Los Angeles,
Mhm.
and as I've pitched Hollywood, screenwriters, said they met, they fell in love, they decided to get married, and they applied for green cards in that order. And I personally thank the US government every day for saying yes to their applications because if they would have been denied, my life story would be very, very different. But my parents became legal residents, got married, settled into the San Fernando Valley, and started a family. I'm one of three. I have an older sister. She's been an educator her whole life. My younger brother's been in City Hall for almost 20 years now. Time flies. And I've had this just amazing life of opportunity, graduate of public schools, mechanical engineering degree from MIT. And to answer your question, I mean, think about the 40 years of struggle and sacrifice my dad made working in a kitchen as a cook, short order cook, providing for our family. For the same time, my mom used to clean houses. So their American dream was not really based on them. It was hoping that their children would have better opportunities and a better life that starts with a good education. And so when I had a chance to study at MIT, 4 years later, come home with the mechanical engineering degree, ready to start my career, that should have been the source of like pride and excitement. But I come home to ads on television, no joke. The governor of California at the time, Governor Pete Wilson, down in the polls, up for reelection. And so he starts touting this Proposition 187. For people who know California political history, this is a big turning point for the state. Proposition 187, in many ways, a precursor to what we see now, scapegoating immigrants, blaming the economic woes of California on immigrant families and immigrant communities like the one I was growing up in. So I couldn't help but take it personal then. Like so many friends and neighbors of mine, we sort of started taking to the streets to protest and to try to call attention to the cruelty of this measure, which ended up passing, by the way, deemed unconstitutional, so it never went into effect. But it did two things to change California's political trajectory. Number one, so many people like my parents who had been living in California for years, if not decades, with no interest and no urgency to become a citizen, finally realizing they needed to. Not only to protect themselves, but as citizens, they could register and vote and have a say in our democracy. And you had, of course, the younger generation like mine saying, hey, if we don't stand up for ourselves somehow, we're going to continue to be the target. And so put the engineering degree aside, started reaching out to neighbors and friends, and started registering people to vote because I figured that's how we make our voice heard at the ballot box. Before I know it, I'm managing a couple political campaigns, kind of like you. And 5 years later, I ran for a city council to represent home, and it's been a tremendous journey, just trying to do good.
How does it feel to absolutely, without a doubt, 100% deliver on that American dream your parents wanted for you?
Yeah. It's I feel blessed. I don't know what other word to use. I feel blessed to have had the opportunities, to have had the courage and the support of so many to pursue those opportunities. And not that it's always easy. There's certainly moments of hardship and struggle, and at times even doubt. But I think about what my parents went through in their pursuit of the American dream, and whenever I think something may be hard for me, I know they had it much harder. So I kind of have no excuse. You got to keep going. And as inspired as I am by my parents' example, now I'm also a proud husband and father. And I think of my kids and what kind of country, what kind of world we're leaving for them when they grow up. So I say my parents are my inspiration, and my kids are now my motivation to keep trying to make this country a better place.
A lot of everybody will have the key phrases of kind of like turn the temperature down. We need to turn the temperature down. Obviously, with what happened in Minnesota and elsewhere, Salt Lake City during the protests. Like, what are we're fighting for people's lives and their livelihood. Their right to live free. We're talking about their right for due process. These are basic tenets of American society. Like, how do you fight that, but keep this temperature you see what I'm saying? Like, it seems very hard to not fight passionately with it. We do it peacefully, but Republicans criticize Democrats of saying this is too fiery or you're being too out there about this. Like, how can you fight back with that kind of I guess opposition, with the fake kind of opposition saying you're going too hard with this?
Yeah. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, absolutely, and I see it both sort of in the inner workings, the behind the scenes in the capital. I see it out in public, right, and everywhere in between. I think what's worked for me is to number one, hold true to your values, honesty and integrity, and you can't say you're being honest if you're not being truthful, and that's sometimes hard to find these days. But you got to stick to that, and over time, people will see you for who you are. That's how reputations are built. That's how goodwill is built. Passion is good. Emotions are good. Those are not bad things.
Mhm.
Uh, but when coupled with lies and misinformation, it's dangerous. But when it's coupled with truth, and honesty and integrity, it's very, very powerful. What happened a couple weeks ago, happened to me, and I'm quick to remind everybody, it happened to be me. But if that's what this administration would do to a senator with a question, imagine what's happening elsewhere in the country when the cameras are not on, right? But just for 1 second to kind of use me as an example, so many I wouldn't say all 53 of my Republican colleagues, but more than just one or two have reached out, for the most part privately, to offer their support. And so I'm hoping that maybe that's an opening because of how I conduct myself, even with people I disagree with. Then maybe I've built a little bit of that credibility and respect and goodwill to get people who may disagree with me on policy to at least listen, and through what happened with me and additional conversations, maybe a small shift in heart, maybe a small shift in mind to make progress on this issue of immigration, and in time on other issues too that I care so much about, uh, and we need to work on.
Right. And we run one of the biggest Contact Congress campaigns out there. We've since November sent over I think close to 400,000 letters on different issues and whatnot. It's constituent contact, so it's people who are constituents to their reps and their senator, or to the rep and their senators. How important is it? Because it's always great to hear from electeds. How important is it that constituents contact their representative and their senators?
Yeah. I think it's hugely important. And I'm glad you do this because as many people as will call my office or send a letter or send an email, I know that it's a small factor, a small percentage of the 40 million people in California. And I think it's more fundamental in our democracy than that two-way engagement, right? Elected officials, and I've seen it over the years, are maybe greater about coming around during the election time to say, I want to hear from you and I want to ask for your vote. But what happens between elections? That's the real work of democracy and policymaking and representation. So for folks who have never made that phone call, never sent that letter, never sent an email, yes, it matters. We do see every single one. And the more personal and passionate you are, the more it's going to stand out, the more difference it's going to make. But I do want to say this also because there's maybe some people who make that a regular habit, especially because of what we're living in right now, the political climate that we're in. Everybody needs to engage, and that engagement can be in any form. For some people, it is communicating to their member of Congress. For others, it might have been going to a march or a rally for the first time. Let it not be the last. Maybe you can organize the next one because we need to continue to speak up. Donald Trump wants nothing more than for us to be too scared and to stay quiet. We can't let him win, that fight. For other people, engagement could be supporting some advocacy organization, a legal defense organization. For others, it could be registering to vote or registering your friends and your family and your coworkers to vote and be ready for next year's midterm. So there's so many ways to engage, but we all need to do our part. We all need to do something.
And before we ramp up here, don't forget, I'm supposed to say this again. Everybody watching, hit the like button so we know you watch. Also, let us know where you are actually watching from in the comments. Um, second to last question, maybe there is a wave, and I see there is a route. As a former campaigner, I do see a route for Dems to take back the Senate. There is a way. Same thing for House, probably an easier route for the House for many reasons. But it is possible. So let's say that they do both. Let's say we get to January of 2027. What's one of the first things you would do if Democrats were to take power again?
Oh my gosh! I mean, it's it's a long sort of pent up list, right? Not
Right.
just on putting forth, some common sense immigration, the modernization of our immigration system and our laws, strengthening access to healthcare, including reproductive healthcare. That's key. Restoring California's ability to lead on tackling climate change. Emission reductions, air quality, protections for the sake of the environment, for the sake of public health, restoring voting rights. Have the Supreme Court has gutted, some of the teeth in the Voting Rights Act that stood for more than 50 years, and continuing to invest in our infrastructure, not just transportation infrastructure, water infrastructure, like to key us up for success economically for the next generation, but in people infrastructure, right? Education and housing and so much more. That's all people want is a good opportunity to succeed and hope that your kids have a little bit better life than you do. Government has a role to play in that as a partner, not as giveaways, but ensuring opportunities to achieve the American dream stay alive and well and accessible and affordable.
Last question. Let's say that someone is down in the dumps. They're not having the best of days. They're not having the best of weeks or months, or they're struggling, or they're hit hard by tariffs, or something is affecting them here. Um, one of the terrible policies that's trying to be implemented. Um, what would you say to them to lift their spirits? Maybe some words of inspiration to leave us with.
Yeah. Well, I think I'll begin with, and I learned this from my wife, who's a mental health advocate. Like, you are not alone. None of us is alone. So don't hesitate to reach out. It could be to a family member, to a friend. You'd be surprised what other people may be going through that you can relate to. Maybe you can lock arms with to try to get help or do something about it. If you're really sort of worried and in crisis, there's a 988 line. But in terms of how we turn the political tide, knowing that we all have a voice, we all have a role to play, and if you watched my floor speech in the Senate last week, I ended it with, if this administration is this afraid of one senator with a question, imagine how afraid they'd be of millions of Americans speaking up. So we all have an opportunity to speak up, and in many ways, a responsibility to speak up. That's how we right the ship that is the United States of America.
Senator Padilla, thank you for all you do, true American patriot. When that happened, the response from you is what I saw. I saw the response, and uh, your head high, stern, stoic, and powerful, and you were not broken or even bent, and it was very inspirational for all of us watching, and so we appreciate you. So thank you for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you so very much. Continue to take care.
We will. And thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great day. Don't forget to restack, share, and like this video. And also, we'll have a link to Senator Padilla's Substack page for you to subscribe to as well. So thanks so much for watching, and onward.